Hey everyone, Jeremy Goodrich, owner of Shine Insurance, and in this video, I am going to explain business insurance in less than 10 minutes. So let's dig into what that exactly means. I'm going to scroll down here on the screen to the first type of coverage, and that is property coverage. This is coverage for bad things that happen to your physical property. The first thing is building coverage. This is the actual coverage for the building. You have a building, it burns down. How much will it cost to replace that building? This number right here should show the cost of replacing the building that you have. If you have 100 buildings, then it should show that number by building. If you only have one, then it should show that one here. Tenants improvements and betterments coverage is if you do not own the building, you rent the building from someone else. Think about a restaurant. You are renting the building from someone else, but you have increased the value or you have built things into the building. Imagine that you could pick up that building, turn it upside down and shake it. If you have built things into someone else's building that would not fall out of the building if you picked it up, turned it upside down and shook it, then you need tenants improvements and betterments coverage to replace those things. Business personal property is the stuff, if you pick the building up, turn it upside down and shook it, that would fall out. This could be equipment that you own. This could be tables and chairs and computers and all sorts of things that are inside of your business but not attached to the building itself. That is business personal property, and this number should represent what it would cost to replace all of that. Loss of income coverage. What would happen if your building burned down and it was not able to be used for a year while they rebuild it? Would you lose rent? Would you lose sales? What would you lose? The loss of income coverage is there to actually replace that lost income and provide that for you in a claim situation. Generally, we want to see this number as the amount of sales or revenue you make in a year from that property. Finally, the deductibles on property coverage are essentially the amount of money you would pay before the insurance company would get involved. So in this case, it would be $2,500 in most types of claims, but in a wind or hail claim, which is like damage to the roof usually or siding, it would be a $5,000 deductible. That is property coverage in a nutshell. Liability coverage is the next type of coverage we're going to talk about. Coverage for bad things that happen to other people because of your business. This could be physical bad things that happen to people, and that is where general liability comes from. You own a restaurant. Someone walks out of the front of your restaurant, slips and falls on ice, hurts themselves, hires a personal injury attorney, and sues you. General liability coverage is what covers you there, and in this example, you would have up to $1 million of coverage in that situation and up to $2 million in an entire year. That means that if you had $2 million in losses in a year, the insurance company would not pay any more. Products and completed operations. What happens if you build something, you make something, you sell it to someone, and then it fails as it's moving forward? The most common example is children's toys or something. You make a children's toy, you manufacture a children's toy, it goes out, something bad happens to kids because of it, they sue you over it. That would be products and completed operations. This coverage applies a lot for contractors or developers as well. You build something, you pass it on to someone else, suddenly it doesn't work. That is products and completed operations coverage. Personal and advertising injury is if you say bad things about someone and they sue you over those bad things. Damage to premises rented to you, not a very common one, but let's say you own a business, you go rent a place for a party, you throw the party, you burn the place down. They sue you over it, or you have to replace that. And finally, medical expenses. This is a really nice coverage. It's usually smaller, but essentially, look, you slipped and fell on our sidewalk. We'll pay for the injury that you had so you don't sue us. We'll pay you right away. This is a very easily accessed coverage. We'll pay you for it so you don't sue us for this larger number. There is sometimes deductibles on liability coverage as well, and you can see that here. Some more liability coverages, employee benefits liability. Let's say you offered benefits to an employee and then didn't follow through with giving them to them, and that employee sued you. You could potentially need some coverage for that. Employment practices liability, very important if you have employees in the hiring or firing process. They decide that you did it unfairly and they sue you over that. Then we have coverage there. Professional liability or errors and omissions, super important if you are an advisor to other people. If you advise people to do things and they do those things and then they deem your advice to have turned out poorly on their business, then they may file suit against you. You can see all these liability coverage have to do with like lawsuits and injury associated, right? So errors and omissions. We gave you advice. that advice didn't work out and suddenly we're in a lawsuit. Directors and officers, if there is a board of your business, very important to have. This protects the board if they make a decision, other people feel it was a bad decision, sue you over it, so on and so forth. Cyber liability and data breach coverage, absolutely important. Let's say you're involved in a data breach of some kind and people's data is affected, their livelihoods or business or personal life are affected, and they sue you over it, or you have to navigate that. We're going to have some coverage there as well. And then finally, if you serve liquor of any kind, whether you're a restaurant or a bar or any other kind of business, liquor liability, someone drinks at your establishment, goes out, causes a car accident, something bad happens, you want to make sure you have liability coverage in that situation. So that's really the liability section of this conversation. Workers' compensation coverage. Well, coverage for injuries to employees. If you have employees, you should have workers' compensation coverage. If they are hurt, you want to make sure there's coverage for them. And that is what work comp is. Again, this video doesn't get into the weeds of how all these things work, but if you have employees, you should have work comp coverage. The next one is commercial auto. If you are a trucking business and you have multiple trucks, you obviously want to have commercial auto coverage. Any business that has vehicles associated with it should have commercial auto coverage. It works just like personal auto in most ways, except it insures vehicles owned by a business as opposed to vehicles owned personally. There is a coverage called hired and non-owned auto liability that most people should have even if your business does not own vehicles. This says if you drive your personal vehicle and you're driving that personal vehicle for business use, maybe you're going to pick up something, maybe you're just going to a meeting and you get in an accident, and through the process of that accident, your personal auto insurance says, you know, you were actually working during this accident. We're not going to cover the claim because we're not there to cover your business exposure. You would potentially have a business exposure even though your car is owned by you personally. Hired and non-owned auto coverage steps in, and that's an important thing to have even if you don't own vehicles in your business name. But if you do own vehicles, obviously you want to have commercial auto coverage. Now, I talked earlier about all the different kinds of liability coverage, right? That's the longest part of this video. If we wanted to have extra limits above the general liability coverage we had, so we have $1 million of coverage, but we're worried, hey, we've got, 100-unit apartment complex and there's lots of tenants, $1 million could go very quickly. We could add an umbrella over the top of that coverage. So you already have the $1 million, but if you add an extra $1 million umbrella, now you have $2 million. That can go up in incrementally. I have clients with $25 million umbrellas. So you can go up and add additional liability coverage through your commercial umbrella. And finally, there's a lot of miscellaneous coverages that aren't in those other sections. So those were kind of the major sections, but here are some miscellaneous coverages that hit on different things. Inland marine coverage is when you have equipment that moves from one place to another, right? Inland means on land. Marine means moving. So if you have things moving on land, maybe you have a construction company and you have lots of trucks and those trucks have lots of equipment in them, then you may want to have some special equipment coverage called inland marine coverage to cover that equipment as it moves around from place to place. Terrorism is a coverage that was created after 9/11. To protect from terrorist attacks and so on and so forth. Ordinance and law is a property coverage for what happens if a building burns down and then as you're rebuilding it, there are ordinances that say you have to build it back better than it was before. You didn't need an elevator in the building before, but now that you're rebuilding it, you have to have an elevator. Well, your standard insurance coverage doesn't have coverage for that. Your insurance is for making you whole, not making you better, so it wouldn't cover the elevator. So we have some ordinance and law coverage. I'm not going to get too far in the weeds of these other things. Happy to answer any and all questions in the comments about these other smaller additions, but it's just important to know that these things exist. So that was business insurance in a very quick nutshell. We start at the beginning. I'm going to scroll back up with property coverage for the actual physical property that you own, then liability coverage for bad things that happen to other people because of you. Next is workers' compensation coverage for injuries to employees, then commercial auto coverage for vehicles or parts of your fleet that you need coverage for, commercial umbrella to add extra liability coverage, and finally some extras, including things like inland marine stuff that moves around. Ultimately, the most most important thing is for you to ask your insurance advisor to advise you thoughtfully about what your business needs and makes decisions from there. Well, I hope this was the quickest and most informational video about business insurance that you've ever listened to. If you liked it, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Every single one of these topics is dug into deeper inside of our channel, so take a look at that. All right, until the next time, have a wonderful day.